Okay, folks, we're going to start it. So if you would take your seats. Well, welcome everyone to the 2017 Annual Clean Water Council hearing. I'm Jim Cosgrove. I'm chair of the council. I suspect we're going to have some more people coming in as we get moving here today, but I didn't want to wait any longer to start. So what I'd like to do first is just quickly ask the other council members to introduce themselves so you have a sense of who we are on the council and who we represent. Tony, you want to start?
Sure. Tony Kraken, I've been on the council.
Maria Connolly, and I'm a planner and representing the Department of Community Affairs.
Dan Benasco, Director of University, Public Member.
Ashley Kerr, and representing Judy Farm Bureau.
Swanari, PSEG, representing CWC.
Joseph Coffey with Angela, but also advisory member from the Water Supply Advisory.
Stan?
Yeah, Stan Cash, New Jersey, Department of Environment.
Okay, thank you. So this is the way we have the day or the afternoon set up here. David Glass is here to give the keynote speech, which will be in just a couple of minutes. Then we follow that with a talk on examples of some non-point source stormwater treatment projects that have worked well in New Jersey, followed by a talk on money. How do we find money to do some of the projects that we're talking about today? And then after that, we will move on to the public testimony. So if you are interested in testifying, you should have indicated so when you checked in. If you haven't done that, please make sure you do that sometime between now and about 2:30. And we'll go, based on the crowd, I don't think we're going to be here till 4 o'clock, but we'll probably start taking testimony around 2:30. So I just wanted to, there's the list of the Clean Water Council members in case you didn't hear everybody, and I suspect some of these people will be coming in. I wanted to just tee this off here. Just this week, the New Jersey DEP issued the, quote, 303D list, the 2014 New Jersey Water Quality Assessment Report. And it actually was a great introduction to what we're talking about here. First of all, one of the things I found interesting is of the assessed waters in New Jersey, unfortunately, most of them are showing up as being impaired. Now, that may seem a little worse than it actually is because it only takes one parameter to cause a stream or a stream segment to be listed as being impaired. But what are the causes of these use impairments? What you see in the graph there, this again is out of the 303D list report. Pathogens and phosphorus are two big issues that are impairing waters. Well, where are pathogens and phosphorus coming from? Well, certainly pathogens are mostly coming from non-point sources. Phosphorus is coming from both point and non-point sources, but certainly a good contribution from non-point sources. What are the solutions? Well, historically, we've used TMDLs to figure out how much we have to ratchet down point and non-point sources. We also now, DEP is using what they call sublist 5R in the assessment report, which is watersheds that are suitable for restoration to solve non-point sources. So they save that for non-point source impaired watersheds only. But the real issue here comes down, in my opinion, to these two bars. This is an example. This is the Raritan nutrient TMDL study. And DEP figured out that we had to get the load in the Raritan from about 12,000 pounds of phosphorus a day down to less than 4,000 pounds a day. The different color bars are the different sources of the nutrient source. The purple color is point sources. Well, how do we deal with point sources? The way we deal with point sources is we ratchet down effluent limits at the wastewater treatment plants. So, for example, that purple section on the left there is the existing condition. DEP determined that purple bar that comes almost up to 4,000 kilograms per day had to get down to the little tiny purple bar on the right. Well, they figured out what that needed to be at each wastewater treatment plant, and there was a mechanism we could put in a permit what these new effluent limits had to be, in this case for phosphorus. But the red bar, which is stormwater runoff from urban areas, and the yellow bar, which is stormwater runoff from agricultural areas, we have prescribed reductions within the TMDL for those sources, but we haven't really made much progress in terms of how to reduce that non-point source load. That is the focus of today's discussion. How do we get at the red and the yellow on that graph? What do we do to figure out how to ratchet those loads down such that you meet the loads on the right? And that's quite a challenge. So with that, I'll turn this over to David Glass, NJDEP Deputy Commissioner, and leave you with him. There you go.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. Happy to be here on behalf of Commissioner Martin. I sense his regrets that he could not make it today. And thank you all for being here, especially members of the council. The New Jersey Clean Water Council has been an important source of information ideas regarding water quality and policy to the commissioner and to DEP's team. If the commissioner were here, he'd say that there are many councils, advisory boards, commissions that report into DEP. But there are a few that he really focuses his time on. The Clean Water Council is one of them. So thank you all to the council members for your work. And on behalf of the commissioner, I really appreciate your willingness to serve. It's sometimes a thankless task of all the amount of time and effort that you put into this, but it really does help us here at DEP and our entire team. Over the past 8 years, DEP has been has had many significant accomplishments in the water sector, many of which you have played a role in. Since 2010, more than $34 million has been spent on implementing 62 non-point source grants to mitigate impacts to water quality. Our beaches have been open 99.9% of the time. We're still trying for that other 0.1%. We've been working to address the presence of emerging contaminants such as PFAS and PFOA. We've made new recommendations for a maximum contaminant level for 123 TCP and PFNA. We consistently monitor over 1,300 public water systems for lead, copper, and other contaminants serving about 8 million people. Over the past 40 years, we have focused on point source pollution and have done a great job addressing that problem. Now our focus needs to be on non-point source stormwater pollution, which brings me here today. I'd like to review 4 major strategies by which New Jersey continues to address non-point source pollution: MS4 permits, combined sewer overflows, ocean water quality projects, and Barnegat Bay. As you all know, DEP has been working on MS4 permits. These permits help to reduce flooding through improved operations and maintenance of stormwater facilities, improve water quality through proper stormwater management, support operations and maintenance of stormwater facilities through inventory and mapping, provide municipalities with a better understanding of their stormwater systems, improve education and training opportunities at the local level, increase public outreach and transparency of stormwater provisions, and eliminate additional permits needed for specific municipal operations. DEP is very sensitive to the issue of unfunded mandates. That's why we are providing assistance to towns and cities related to inventory, mapping, training, and guidance. Within that, we have developed a toolkit which includes online training resources and free live design review courses for municipal engineers. Recently developed maintenance guidance available on our website. and a free inventory and mapping application is being developed as well. We're just about to issue the final MS4 Tier A and Tier B municipal stormwater NGIPDs general permits, and these will help us achieve water quality enhancements across the state. I'm also proud to say that this administration is addressing the historic problems of combined sewer overflows. In fact, this is the first administration to do so. March 12, 2015, DEP issued 25 final permits to address the 210 CSOs still existing in the state. Goals of the new permit include improved water quality by reducing and ultimately eliminating all 210 CSO outfalls, reducing flooding, providing opportunities for green infrastructure, and enhanced asset management and operations and maintenance. New Jersey is proactively addressing CSOs through permits, unlike other states that are doing so as a requirement of federal enforcement action. Since 2010, more than $230 million in low-cost loans have been provided by the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Finance Program for stormwater and CSO improvements throughout the state. $80 million of this was principal forgiveness, which many of you know is grant-like money, and we are on track to eliminate all of New Jersey's CSOs. It's going to take time to complete this effort, but we're on a path that will get us there. Over the past 8 years, we have also worked hard to address ocean water quality issues. We have not only continued to work the work started by past administrations, but have taken it to another level. We have worked with communities to tackle area-specific problems with focused projects to help us get the job done. I want to give you a few examples. In Spring Lake, Rec Pond has been a priority for this administration since day one, and we've made a commitment to address it. As far back as 2001, as little as 1/10 of an inch of rainfall would cause beach closures. Superstorm Sandy provided us with an additional set of challenges and showed us the vulnerabilities of our coastal lakes. To address Rec Pond's issues, we worked with Monmouth County and the towns of Spring Lake and Seagirt to determine the major cause of contamination. We found that sewer and stormwater systems are interconnected, causing raw sewage to flow into Rec Pond whenever it rains. Once this issue was discovered, the towns could fix it. We then worked with partners to address Rec Pond's other vulnerabilities, which included some post-Sandy fixes, which included a second outfall pipe, sluice gate, and a living shoreline to help reduce localized flooding. I had the pleasure of announcing this event this past winter, and it was a good reminder that you're deputy commissioner when you're on the beach in the winter at Rec Pond announcing this event. It was very warm that day, but a worthwhile project, and glad that we're able to make that announcement. Shark River is a similar story. It is another example of how DEP is focused on stormwater-related issues. Several studies were conducted in 2015, and areas with elevated levels of bacteria were found during storm conditions. This resulted in a ban on shellfish harvesting in the area. The presence of bacteria suggested a possible unpermitted wastewater discharge. Municipal, county, and state representatives worked together to find a source of contamination. They identified areas of the sewer line that were leaking, allowing contaminated water to make its way through groundwater and eventually into the Shark River. Neptune City, Township, and Belmar responded quickly, repairing and replacing portions of the sewer line to eliminate discharge, improving water quality in the river. Another example occurred this summer when we had unusual exceedances at 2 Atlantic Highlands beaches. Highlands Public Works partnered with DEP staff to identify a sanitary sewer line break that was negatively affecting water quality at Mary's Creek, which was causing the high levels of bacteria at both beaches. Once identified, Highlands quickly repaired the sanitary sewer line. Subsequent monitoring indicated the bacteria levels were back to within acceptable ranges, and the beaches were reopened. When working with partners like this, and by taking a find and fix approach, we can quickly address non-point source pollution that otherwise can affect water quality for years. Sometimes these fixes are easy, and sometimes the problems are more difficult to find and take a larger investment to repair. We've been successful in addressing both. However, the commitment and partners needed to engage to make it happen. By investing in recovery and resilience projects such as these, we're safeguarding and protecting our coastal communities, working to improve the infrastructure, and ultimately preserving our $42 billion tourism industry from future storms. I'd now like to turn to talk about Barnegat Bay. As you know, the long-term restoration of this Barnegat Bay has been the governor's top priority during this administration. Barnegat Bay is of vital importance to the state's culture, history, economy, and environment. But the bay is a vulnerable resource that needs to be protected, enhanced, and restored so it can be enjoyed by all generations to come. For this reason, in 2010, Governor Christie directed DEP to move forward with a 10-point plan to clean up and restore the bay. The plan has resulted in successful actions that have helped the bay, including funding of $24 million in 31 stormwater infrastructure projects and upgrades within the bay's watershed. New Jersey's first comprehensive water monitoring network for both fresh and marine water quality was established with more than 5,000 water samples taken and analyzed. Governor Christie signed legislation that established the most restrictive standards in the nation for nitrogen content and fertilizer and application rates for use, preserved more than 11,000 acres of open space in the watershed through Green Acres, the Ocean County Natural Lands Trust, and its partners, all since 2011. And DEP has led 8 successful Barnegat Bay Blitzes, which is a volunteer event, which has resulted in thousands of pounds of litter being picked up by 32,000 volunteers. In addition, as part of the plan, we funded 10 research projects focused on filling the data gaps and addressing health of the bay. These were completed by prominent professors at top universities, including the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel, Rutgers, Montclair State, George Mason, Monmouth, and Rider. The results create one of the most comprehensive research studies ever done in a single estuary. The research and monitoring clearly indicate that areas of the northern part of the bay are impacted by nutrients due to stormwater runoff. To address this, new TMDLs will be targeted in these areas. The central and southern parts of the Barnegat Bay are being targeted for protection strategies to ensure that the healthy areas stay healthy, and enhancement strategies for the areas that need extra attention so that they do not become impaired. Now that we are taking what we have learned and moving the science into action with phase 2 of this project, known as the Barnegat Bay Restoration, Enhancement, and Protection Strategy, we are providing $20 million in grants to municipalities and nonprofits to support this plan. Our studies have provided us with specific data and sound science on which we can base policy decisions moving forward. Some people say that we should have made these decisions 8 years ago, but we had no data to back up these decisions. We didn't know where to focus our efforts, what the problems were, and how to address the issues. Our studies provide us with enough information to move forward. We can now target TMDLs for specific areas, and we have a baseline on which to measure our improvements. Our goal remains the same since 2010, since the 2010 announcement of a comprehensive plan to follow the science in order to restore, protect, and enhance the health of the bay. We will continue to work with our partners to educate, communicate, and advocate for a healthy watershed. In fact, we've already been working with Toms River on the municipal stormwater compliance assistance, and have already had success with them. This is designed to help communities by identifying all areas in their operations that could benefit from improved technologies and procedures. This also includes financing and other resources that help them better manage their stormwater inland instead of sending pollutants to the river and ultimately the bay. This pilot has been a significant success, and we hope to continue the successes in the future. Once again, on behalf of Commissioner Martin, I want to thank the members of the council for your service to the state. The state just doesn't want partners, just want partners like the Clean Water Council to address these challenges. We need them. We need your expertise, your energy, your perspective. There are a lot of groups out there do a lot of talking and criticizing, but there are only a certain number of people who roll up their sleeves and do the work, as this council does. I want to thank you for your leadership over the years. The Commissioner and I look forward to hearing your recommendations. Thank you.
We have a few minutes if anyone has any questions for the Deputy Commissioner.
Hearing none.
Quiet crowd.
Favorite hobbies? Prediction on the Yankees game? No? All right, good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to move on to our, wow, that's great. We get good service here. We're going to move on to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Brittany Mussolino from the Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association, and she's going to talk about the title of her talk is Voluntary Action is Gaining Traction for Meaningful Stormwater Pollution Improvements. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brittany, and if we could switch to her PowerPoint. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So last time I was in this room presenting, I was a watershed ambassador presenting on the work I did during my year of service. So it's really great to be back talking about what I've done with Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association the past about 2 years now. And non-point source pollution is really the biggest thing we focus on as a nonprofit, non-regulatory group. And it's a passion of mine, which can be kind of a weird thing to say sometimes. I think this room gets it a bit, but preventing non-point source pollution is a majority of what we do as an organization, as a watershed group. And I just want to thank Jim Cosgrove for inviting me to speak today. And I want to talk a little bit about our organization to get started. I know a lot of you are familiar with us. We're a member-supported nonprofit that started in 1949, and we focus on Central Jersey and keeping its water clean, safe, and healthy. We do that through conservation, advocacy, science, and education. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today are projects that we've done through our Science and Stewardship Department, and specifically through the river-friendly certification programs. Oh, what happened? Okay. So as an organization and tackling non-point sources, there are a few things that we really focus on and a few programs that we do this through. Our river-friendly programs offer certification to a variety of sites, including residents, businesses, golf courses, and schools. And I'll talk a bit more about what that entails in the next slide. Green infrastructure is a big focus of ours in the last year and a half or so, which I'll talk about a bit more with a grant from the DEP, and focusing on bioretention specifically and designing for better infiltration of water. Education and outreach is a large part of what we do. Our education department is probably our biggest department of the organization and educates over 10,000 adults and students a year. And that is the biggest, I think, foundation of a lot of this work is just educating people. It should always be a factor when you're thinking about a project or just working with groups in general to have that education component. And water quality monitoring, which we've been doing since 1992 through a volunteer monitoring program with over 100 volunteers, monitoring about 45 sites in our watershed area. And this is a really important piece to a lot of the green infrastructure projects and river-friendly specific projects. Having that monitoring before and after is something that you don't see a lot, and it is usually a missing piece of grant money that we get. So that's something that we want to focus on a lot more in the future. So our river-friendly programs began in about 2002. We got a large grant from the EPA to focus on non-point source pollution prevention through these programs. And they've morphed a lot through the years, especially the last few years. We've really updated our standards and the way that we work with sites and what we ask of them to submit to us. We have the 4 programs I mentioned, and there's also a farms program, which I think is going to be really important and that we want to get involved with a bit more in the upcoming years. It is now run by the North Jersey RC&D with some support from the New Jersey Water Supply Authority as well. So they're the ones to go to ask about those. But similar focuses, goals to improve water quality and environmental health. We really focus on stormwater management, wildlife habitat enhancement, providing that kind of natural landscape for wildlife to have habitat, but for also water to really go somewhere and not just run off into our streams. This is all voluntary, as I said, so that's a good and a bad part about this, I think. Having that voluntary component makes people more interested in what you're doing, more interested in the project, and willing to work with you. The downside of that is getting them to do it. So that's where, working and partnering with other groups really helps. Our river-friendly programs have recently developed a really strong partnership in the Raritan Basin with the New Jersey Water Supply Authority and Raritan Headwaters Association. We all kind of work together to work with these different sites around the Raritan Basin, and it has been a success in getting the word out a bit more and doing more outreach through social media and other ways to reach different populations. The process by which we certify sites changes depending on the site. So with our businesses and golf courses, we require a lot of documentation. They submit to us their IPM plans, soil and landscape management, kind of narrative, soil testing, pretty much everything they do on their site, and a big focus on their stormwater management as well, all of their best management practices, and then we try to suggest some improvements they can make, small improvements that will build up over the years. And usually these certifications can take 2 to 3 years. So there's a relationship you develop with the site, and you can really, focus on meaningful projects. Our school and resident program is kind of at a lower level. Schools really focus on the education of the students and the campus, projects on campus, and our resident program really just targets homeowner activity on their landscape. So it's really just a self-survey, but it's a nice education for residents and kind of that smaller scale. But residential is also very still important. I think a lot of sources of non-point source pollution come from our residential areas. So that's something that we really focus our attention on. So some monitoring approaches we use through the River Friendly program and other projects we do include integrated pest management, so making sure that they are using certain techniques like growing degree days, really knowing the insect or the pest that is affecting their site, and using small dosages of pesticides or whatever they might be using, and timing. As I said, soil and landscape care, using maps of where there might be issues on the site, hotspots of pests, and just a lot of levels of their maintenance and what their routine is, and documenting all of that. A lot of times we'll come to a site and they never really thought about writing it down, and then the next person comes in and doesn't know what was happening on the site. So it's really that knowledge of a business's campus or a golf course to continue those good practices. And water conservation is another portion of this. These are just a few of the standards involved with the River Friendly certification. Water monitoring and irrigation tracking, making sure that there's no leaks, kind of just really basic maintenance that needs to be kept up on. We also perform a site visit to look at buffer zones, stream health, pond health, just visual. Sometimes we'll go in there and do chemistry and biological as well to see if there's any further issues. So it's nice. River Friendly kind of offers a way to get to kind of a higher level of working with the site, so we can do that monitoring. We can implement maybe bigger projects if they have funding to do so. And I'm going to actually talk about a specific example that we are working on right now. Meadow Lakes is a senior living community in East Windsor, and they applied to the River Friendly Business Program about a year ago. And they have a very large pond, which they've named Shanks Pond. I'm not sure why, but it is part of the Rocky Brook tributary. So it then feeds into Petty Lake. I'll show on the next slide. They had some issues with algal blooms really affecting their pond. They actually even have a smaller pond, as you see on the side, and then an even smaller pond. Really so bad that you couldn't see anything, a blanket. I was told that they even lost a few swans, which they keep on site to scare off geese, which work really well, actually. I think it's a cool tactic. And they really do treat the pond with a variety of different products, including something called sludge away, copper sulfate. So we're really trying to work on decreasing what they have to put into the pond, and really tracking what is happening on the site, which we've done through actually mapping all of the inlets around the site, and there's a lot, and all the outfalls that are going into the pond, as we have been monitoring before our project. So we were lucky enough that this community had a resident that wanted to donate a nice chunk of money to us to install floating wetlands, which was a new project for us as an organization, and we were really excited about. So this is showing the site kind of from a higher view. It is surrounded by the Petty School and the Petty Golf Course and the Turnpike. So there's a lot going on. And a lot of different water quality issues. Our monitoring in wet and dry weather in the spring and the fall showed impaired for phosphorus and nitrogen, not a big surprise, and higher in where there were constrictions and a lot of kind of leaf matter, and where the water wasn't flowing as well. So we developed maps and did the research on floating wetlands and are actually installing them tomorrow. So it was like a little too early to show you what they look like in the water, but I'm sure some of you know about the floating wetlands. This was us building them. You could do a DIY, or you can purchase something called the Biohaven, which is kind of the main product you get for the floating wetlands. They're made out of a fibrous material. It kind of felt like a Brillo pad, kind of scratched us up a bit, but it will allow for plants to grow through and really get down into the water and attract microbes and all these beneficial things that will soak up the nutrients from the water naturally. So they have the potential to move thousands of pounds of algae per year by soaking up those nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, which is what we're aiming for. Our goal for this is to, have the site just really stop treating the water by installing about 700 square feet of floating wetland. And we're going to do that kind of piecemeal over time and using plants that are really great at soaking up nutrients, so water-loving plants that have strong roots and that are native. And that material, if you're wondering, is called polyflow. So it's pretty simple to make. And I know Rutgers does a lot of this work and has made videos about it. So this is something we're looking at to do more around the watershed. It is treating the symptom and not the problem. But I think it's a nice way to bring attention to the issues in our watershed. It's a really nice educational piece. And I think it helps when you can't install green infrastructure on a site or when it's already an impaired water body. It's a really useful tool. There are a lot of different studies, but not too many hard numbers on what the removal rate is. But we are doing monitoring before and after to see that. But I've seen ranges of 40 to 90% removal of nitrogen and phosphorus. Some other real-world approaches that we're doing include expanding no-mow and no-spray areas on our river-friendly sites. That's one of the main things we encourage, especially on corporate campuses. For example, Johnson & Johnson, I was just at today, and they were doing really great with expanding kind of their no-mow zones on a almost 300-acre property. So that's one tactic. Green infrastructure, of course. Looking at redirection, disconnection of downspouts, capture and reuse of water, bioretention, kind of all the basic green infrastructure tactics. And then just general landscape best management practices. So, maintenance of your stormwater structures, landscape care, really knowing your soils, aerating, and making sure infiltration is happening, and sustainable pest management. So one example of a school we worked with is Princeton Day School. They're actually certified last year, and they were interested in doing a rain garden on their property. It's a pretty big site, about 80 acres. And they had a really big erosion problem happening near their outdoor garden and playground. So you could see in this picture, this was before the rain, and then that's after the rain. The storm drain is there, you just can't see it. It was completely covered with sediment. So definitely a big sediment issue, and we're hoping that by installing a rain garden kind of in a weird shape along in front of the storm drain, that we would help to remove total suspended solids and anything else that might be running into that storm drain. So this is a great way to get the kids involved and learn about stormwater issues and just about rain gardens in general. This was pretty much planned and designed by the school, so they're monitoring and having to add plants as the years go on. This was just installed last year, so they're going to have to, you have to maintain it over the years. But bioretention can really be effective with TSS removal. These numbers are from the New Jersey BMP manual, and this is what we use to show the effectiveness, or at least the theoretical effectiveness, of green infrastructure. And these numbers I got from calculating the drainage area and the area of the rain garden. So there's a lot of, calculations out there that can show the impact of a project, especially something like this where it can be difficult to monitor. Oh, and that's after planted in last fall. They had no more sediment issues. So it's a small scale thing, but when it adds up, it can make a big difference. Two of the large sites we work with through the River Friendly program, Janssen Pharmaceuticals and Yasna Polana, which is a golf course in Princeton, have increased their NOMO zones by thousands of square feet and replaced just mowed grass that they were probably fertilizing and may have been compacted with native New Jersey wildflower plantings. A vegetative filter can remove up to 70% TSS and 30% nitrogen and phosphorus. It's supposed to be TP. So even simple projects like this, just getting rid of lawns and mowed grass, even in stormwater basins, can make a big difference. So this was actually a policy department project. Mike Pissarro, who's here, worked on this, a stormwater ordinance in Princeton. And this was voluntary by Princeton themselves. So, they really wanted to control their stormwater better. That picture is shown from, I think, Irene, and it's completely flooded the train station. And they have flooding issues pretty often. So they pretty much reduced the trigger of soil disturbance and impervious cover, and that would trigger the state regulations of 80% TSS removal and just not increasing runoff from the previous levels. And then maintaining 100% average annual pre-construction recharge. I had to look that up. And then they introduced a minor development regulation. So if you have an addition of over 400 square feet, you have to capture 2 gallons per square feet using green infrastructure. So that's not something we see a lot, and we're working with them ongoing to implement more green infrastructure and work on their stormwater management. And this is just an example of what you could do at the municipal level. Our 319 grant, which is from DEP, this is an example of how DEP support really helps our work with focusing on non-point sources. We are doing an impervious cover reduction project, which you may have seen Rutgers Water Resources has done in a lot of towns throughout the state, I think over 50 now. And it includes selecting sites in 16 municipalities in our watershed just through mapping, and then actually going to the sites on the ground, doing visits and assessments, and creating designs through ArcGIS. To capture, our goal is usually to capture 100% of the runoff volume, but to really do what we can with the site, and then we present that to the township. So it ends up being a report of, impervious cover assessment, land use assessment, and all of these kind of ready-to-go projects. And if they're interested in doing that, we'll look for implementation money and try to get more green infrastructure in our watershed. We also recently got a second grant, or approved for a second grant, to focus on the Beedensbrook watershed specifically, which I believe is in the 303D list. And we will be doing green infrastructure in Hopewell Borough for that as well. So in conclusion, there's kind of a holistic approach to non-point source. Just focusing on green infrastructure isn't going to solve everything. Really focusing on how we're using our landscape and working with sites one-on-one, developing that relationship to, reduce what is running off. Stronger policies at the municipal level, for example, stormwater management, which I talked about a bit, and the review process of new development or redevelopment. Riparian buffer zones is a big one. Tree cover, just some examples. And education, of course, should be with everything. So with that, I just want to thank you. Thank you for having me speak, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Before we move to our next speaker, does anybody have any questions for Brittany? It's a quiet crowd today. All right, our next speaker is Nathaniel Sajak. Nathaniel's the watershed director of the Sussex County MUA, Wallkill River Watershed Management Group, and he's going to show us the money. That's a big issue here because it takes a lot of it to make these happen. He's got some great examples of how he was able to pool resources from different funding sources to be able to do some of these non-point source projects. So, Nathaniel.
So, excuse me, my name is Nathaniel Sidock. I'm the Watershed Director for the Sussex County Municipal Utilities Authority in the Wallkill River Watershed Management Group. Brittany doesn't even know it, but she threw me a great fastball, which, don't tell my son I'm about to make a Yankee reference as a diehard Met fan, but I'll put my best Aaron Judge swing on and reference the fact that Brittany talked about being a former watershed ambassador through the AmeriCorps program. So taking that fastball and hitting it out of the park, I'd like to applaud the Department of Environmental Protection. I myself was also a watershed ambassador. I was in the first class of ambassadors in 2000, 2001. So when we're talking here about non-point source pollution and how do we go about, dealing with this problem here in the state of New Jersey, for 18 years, the Department of Environmental Protection has sponsored the New Jersey Watershed Ambassadors Program through the AmeriCorps program. And when you think about that, that's 18 years of ambassadors out there working with our public, with our community to engage these problems of non-point source pollution. So I want to thank the Department of Environmental Protection for continuing to sponsor this valuable program, because that is a great tool to help us with the problems that we're speaking here about today. I would also like to thank Mr. Cosgrove and the Clean Water Council for inviting me to be here today. I'm excited to spend a few minutes with you. I guess the comment was made about showing you the money. Well, I don't have the money in my pocket to show you. But I'm going to speak to you a little bit about, how we have been able to find unique opportunities to combine resources, to work as partners, to put a lot of these projects on the ground. And what you'll hear and what I'm about to speak about is there's a lot of similarity into many of the things that Brittany spoke about, as well as what I'm going to speak about, happening in different areas of the state, completely different areas of the state. But because they're happening simultaneously, we're making huge strides here in New Jersey. Real quickly, my organization, the roots of our work, of our growth, started in those early years of the early 2000s, when we were awarded the Sussex County MUA was awarded one of those initial planning grants from the Department of Environmental Protection to jumpstart watershed management out in the local watersheds. The basis at the time was to go out there and develop these watershed restoration plans, tell the story of the watershed, find out what's going on, engage the community, find project opportunities, go out there, get the public involved in the work in trying to restore and protect our waterways. For years, we've been working on targeted watershed areas in Sussex County, New Jersey, up there in the northwest corner. Yes, I may be referenced as the Wallkill River Watershed Management Group, but we've worked in both the Wallkill and the Upper Delaware watershed, specifically here in Sussex County, the Paulinscale watershed. So I often like to think of ourselves as becoming that watershed liaison for all of Sussex County. And similar to what Brittany spoke about, the basis or the foundation for our success and our growth have been those education and outreach programs, the community stewardship programs, getting people outside the meeting room into the field to be a part of a project or an initiative. And then the staple of our efforts have been formed around three very important programs: an agricultural outreach and assistance program, a riparian ecosystem enhancement program, and a stormwater outreach and assistance program. And I'm going to speak to all three of those programs when I speak to you a little bit more in a few minutes here about the leveraging of resources and funding to put projects on the ground. Ultimately, though, what I feel is the most successful component or most important component of doing the work that we're doing, whether it's in the watersheds that I work in or the watersheds that all of you work in, is being the local boots on the ground. You know, being that entity that's there day in and day out, getting our hands and feet wet, studying the watershed, understanding what's going on out there, studying the land uses, learning where the ag resources are, where the agricultural land uses are, where the municipal and developed land uses are, or our recreational land uses. We need to develop that understanding of the watershed if we're going to be able to successfully work within it. Getting to know what's important to our stakeholders. You know, what are the recreational concerns? What are their interests? What is going to bring them to the table to want to work with us? And then ultimately, as that local entity, you are the person, you are the group, you are the organization that's building the relationships, that's forming the one-on-one friendships, not just partnerships, but friendships with the farmers and the landowners, that's getting the students out there, that's working with the local businesses, like a local nursery, to supply materials for a project. Those relationships are critical when we're looking at trying to maximize the funding that we have available to us. I've been asked to speak specifically today about our work in the agricultural community and the municipal community. And I'll start with our work in the agricultural community. Over the last few years, we've worked aggressively to build a cooperative cost share program, bringing together resources from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and the Non-Point Source 319 program in combination with USDA and NRCS. We have found unique ways to pair these resources, pair the partnerships, pair the technical skills to work with the farmers in our watersheds. Ultimately, what we've been able to successfully achieve is a combination of our 319 funding resources that have been awarded to us by the Department of Environmental Protection with NRCS's EQIP funding to help that farmer put a project on the ground that he or she may not have been able to do in the past because they just did not have enough funding to make up the difference. Ultimately, the 319 funding that we've been able to secure from the department has allowed us to leverage with the USDA NRCS funding resources to get a farmer to that 90% cost coverage for a project, leaving them with only 5 or 10% remaining to cover on their own, which is a lot easier to cover than, say, 30 or 40% of the remaining funds. We have successfully utilized these funds in Sussex County to put ag restoration projects and ag BMP projects on the ground in the Papicating and Clove Brook watershed, as well as the Paulinskill watershed. You need a nucleus project. You need a demonstration to be able to showcase what you can do. In addition to that, though, you also need a landowner. You need a farmer who's willing to take that gamble with you. And we had one of those farmers. Back in 2013, we had a farmer in Wantage Township, a large dairy farm. As he said, he was willing to be our guinea pig. He let us sit at that kitchen table with him. When I say us, I mean us as the local watershed restoration group bringing DEP funding to the table, not NRCS. You know, we needed to develop that trust, that friendship, not just a partnership, that friendship. And this farmer, he took us on his farm. He opened his farm property to us. He allowed us on the site to really understand what was going on out there. He engaged us in his day-by-day activities to understand where his problems were, where his resource concerns were. And in the process of doing so, we built that trust. And we developed an understanding of what was impacting his farm, whether it would be the manure stockpiles or the barnyard runoff or the unrestricted access that his livestock had to the surface ways. These were existing resource concerns on his farm. He wasn't happy about them. He wanted assistance with doing something to solve these problems, which ultimately, we were talking about, stormwater. These are stormwater runoff concerns. Up in Sussex County, when we're talking about some of our farm operations, the runoff from these farm properties is a significant concern to our waterways. So here we had a farmer who was asking for assistance, and finally we had a farmer that was willing to allow us, with our funding from DEP, to work side by side with NRCS to do something about it. So working with him, combining the resources, we were able to put ag BMPs on this farm that included a concrete heavy use area, allowing this farmer to better manage that barnyard runoff, to better manage the manure generated on this farm. The waste or the stormwater from his roofs was redirected outside of the heavy use area. And then we also helped install a large manure collection tank that allows this farmer to collect up to 6 months worth of manure at a time so that he can better manage when he spreads it on his fields. And providing him that ability to better manage that resource not only helps his operation, but it helps our job with respect to trying to improve our waterways. As a result of that nucleus project and that farmer that took a chance on us and was willing to work with us, word of mouth goes a long way. And before we knew it, multiple farmers were finally willing to say, we will work with you as well. And as a result of that nucleus project, in the years since then, we have actually worked side by side with NRCS, utilizing the funding from DEP, as well as many other partners, to get involved in other ag BMP projects, including, as you see here on this list, soil erosion control measures such as grass waterways, covered heavy use areas, concrete heavy use areas. We've dealt with liquid manure storage BMPs. We've been actively involved in assisting with cover crop. We're currently involved in a livestock waterway exclusion project on another large dairy farm in the Clovebrook watershed. We've assisted with funding for comprehensive nutrient management plans, which opens up the door for the ag BMP projects to get on the ground. And then last but not least, just as important as that list of structural ag BMPs on our agricultural lands are those riparian buffers. And Brittany started speaking to that as well in her presentation. That specific project I just referenced is only one of many different success stories that we've been able to generate side by side with a specific landowner in the watersheds we're working in. One very dear to my heart and very important to me is what I call the Ideal Farm story. Ben and Jan Juritzma of Ideal Farms in Lafayette, New Jersey, right there in the heart of the Paulinskill watershed, they too were one of those landowners that said, you can come work on my farm. You can come work on my property. What would you like to do? They put their land in our hands to find something to help them with their properties. And as a result, that small little 1 mile stretch of Paulinskill River that they opened up to us, they allowed us onto that property to begin a riparian restoration effort. That riparian restoration effort, that's a floodplain improvement project designed to improve the ecosystem functions of that floodplain, to better manage stormwater. And we had a retired grazing pasture here that was no longer being used for ag activity. And I remember when I asked Jan Juritzman for permission for us to utilize the funding resources we had to plant her property, she said yes. And she's been asked over and over, why did you allow that organization to go out there and do that work? And her answer in the beginning was always, it just made sense. She had no use for the property anymore for ag purposes. So why not allow for restoration to take place on her farm? Little did she know the impact that she would have in allowing us to start that project on her property. Because here we are 5 years later, and what started on the Juritzman farm right here on this 1 mile stretch has now resulted in a 4 mile contiguous riparian restoration corridor, bringing together this entire list of partners and funding resources that you see. Over 12,000 trees have been planted throughout this entire corridor, covering 4 miles, as I said, linking agricultural properties, state protected properties, commercial properties, not to mention hundreds and hundreds of community volunteers who have gone out there and participated in this effort. Little did Jan Juritzman know that when she allowed us to go on that property, this would be the result. And what we have now brought to the table is a project that is making a real difference in the Paulinskill watershed and connecting funding partners and resources like you see over there in a unique way that is now being duplicated throughout the entire state. What I referenced with regards to all these farm properties, with the agricultural properties, combining of the resources, finding unique ways for us partners to work together can be duplicated and repeated on our other land use areas. That being said, how about our municipal properties? How about our developed areas? Here's a perfect example. The town of Newton looking at an aerial map of their municipal park. We study that municipal park as the local watershed entity just like we did the farm. We go to the municipal officials in that town and we try to develop that same partnership, and I'm going to use the word again, friendship, like we do on the farm. You cannot even begin to implement these projects and find ways to combine the resources without having that friendship and that trust. And believe it or not, using the success stories on the farms help us when we get to the municipal park. And you need to find that low-hanging fruit, that nucleus. Well, in the town of Newton, it was a very simple low-hanging fruit that we were able to capitalize on. That little X marks the spot there was an area where there was a very large stream debris clog right behind one of their municipal buildings. So little did the town know of the significance of that little stream debris problem, because ultimately during storm events, the stormwater loading coming from the urban areas of town was impacting the stream and ultimately flooding this park area, their township park. The biggest concern was the ball field, which was being inundated by the floodwaters during large events. Here was a perfect opportunity to form that friendship with the township DPW. And when you're going to try and implement projects in municipal land or on municipal lands, there is no better ally than the township DPW. And I think many of you in the room can agree with that statement. So here we helped them develop a process. We helped them get the permit by rule approval from the Department of Environmental Protection to perform that stream cleanup. So we performed that stream cleanup. The guys from the from the DPW, they loved the opportunity to do something in their stream. It was different from the day-by-day operations that they're used to. As a result, we had that low-hanging fruit victory, which gave us the ability to form the friendship with the DPW, which has now resulted in all kinds of additional work products in their municipal park. That friendship, that's a form of resource commitment. Because getting our township DPWs, our municipal DPWs to help us put these projects on the ground, that is a form of funding in itself. So the ability to leverage the resources, start by having a funding source that allows our organization to go out there to form that friendship. Once we form that friendship, we work with the municipality, we bring in other partners, and we put a project on the ground. Just next door in neighboring Hampton Township, another great low-hanging fruit for us, the local municipal school. And similar to what Brittany spoke to, you're looking for projects of opportunity in our watersheds. Because when we find the project of opportunity, you have an ability to bring the partners together. People are attracted to projects like this. They want to use the funding resources, the technical resources, and the skills they have to help. In this case, this school gave us 300 resources. 300 students, all right? 300 students that were wanting to learn, that wanted to do something about their watershed. The Paulsfield River is right in their front yard. So here we go again. We saw an opportunity to bring together partners. We saw an opportunity to bring the township DPW back into another project. We saw an opportunity to bring the local nursery into the project. We were able to combine funding resources from the Department of Environmental Protection, the William Penn Foundation, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, Rutgers, New Jersey Future, and many others to put a large rain garden on the ground on this school campus. Brittany, I'm not trying to turn this into a competition, but ultimately what we ended up building here was a rain garden that was 3,800 square feet in size, capable of managing close to 500,000 gallons of stormwater a year. That's 500,000 gallons of stormwater that's being infiltrated into this rain garden and not into the Paulsfield across the street. Most importantly, with this project, outside of the water quality improvement that we were getting a community of 300 to 400 students, parents, administrators, faculty members who were invested in a project. We brought together local community members who now understood why we were doing this. So when you think about all the different funding contributions that came in the form of hand labor, Township in-kind service or Township DPW in-kind services to help us build the site, local Cerbo's Nursery helping to donate lots of the plant materials, in addition to the community members that are now helping to take ownership of this and maintain this project. And all that's happening without having a direct, amount of money in my pocket to show you. Because we built the friendship, we built the relationship. When we look at that rain garden today, it's over a year old now. It has served as the nucleus, just like that farm project did, for many other projects. And as a result, now there are other funding sources that have come to our table because of the success of this project. Additional funding from the Department of Environmental Protection, from the William Penn Foundation, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, New Jersey Future, Rutgers, is now allowing us to explore other project opportunities on this campus, other project opportunities in the lakes surrounding this campus, and then also in the town of Newton. And I'll explain that in a second. But ultimately, we talk about the funding resources that are out there. And sometimes those best funding resources are in the form of that community partnership project. Because when you bring these partners together, all of a sudden the costs of a project disappear and instead are magnified in the effort of all these partners working together to make it happen. So I spoke about the town of Newton. I spoke about that McEwen School being our nucleus project. Well, starting next week, that same process is going to be repeated right next door in the town of Newton in their memory park. Not quite 3,800 square feet, but 3,200. I'll take it. The Township DPW is going to help us once again with the excavation of the site. The local nursery is helping to donate some of the materials. Funding was provided for the design of the project from the William Penn Foundation and New Jersey Future, working side by side with Rutgers University and the Water Resources Department. And then once again, students from the local school there, the town of Newton, are coming to help us build the project. And those are only some of the resources that are coming to help us put this project on the ground. When I think about the overall picture and trying to tie it all together for you, for our organization, the 319 non-point source program here, sponsored by the Department of Environmental Protection, has been that funding foundation over the years that has allowed us to build something. It has empowered us to create projects, to make things happen. And that funding source, similar to what Brittany was speaking about, has allowed us to go out there and work with others to get those technical resources and guidance that we need. It has also allowed us to build the partnerships with other partners that are funding or that are sponsoring the growth of these projects. That funding source from the department also put us in the position to be able, as a small watershed organization, to really benefit when the William Penn Foundation launched the Delaware River Watershed Initiative in April of 2013. If you're not already familiar with the William Penn Foundation and the Delaware River Initiative, which I'm sure many of you are, as they quote, this program was designed to bring together a form of collaboration amongst conservation organizations that hadn't been seen before. And ultimately what it has allowed is for a bridging of partners that, in my opinion, is the strongest that there has ever been. When I think about the critical keys to success, and specifically I was asked about, how do we leverage all of our resources? Well, the first step is to identify those resource concerns. We can't put a project on the ground, we can't find funding sources to help put that project on the ground unless we truly understand what those resource concerns are. Then we generate the management strategies. Then we foster those unique cooperative partnerships that allow us to share and leverage the resources. Most importantly, then we engage and empower the community. We're all being asked here today, how can we handle non-point source pollution in New Jersey? All of us in the room are tied to this day in and day out in some way, shape, or form. We do that as professionals, we do that as conservation organizations, we do that as partners in this field. But we can't do it by ourselves. We need that community to be a part of it with us. So the power of leveraging funding, leveraging resources, how is that helping us drive restoration and stewardship work? Well, the reality is it is helping us improve the water quality and the watershed health of our watersheds here in New Jersey. It's helping us enhance ecological habitats. It's helping us create new recreational opportunities. Remember, one of my first slides said, what's important to the community members that we work with? We need to recognize that sometimes it is those recreational opportunities. So if we accept that as something that's important to them, we can use that in helping them understand why we need them to work with us. We raise that educational awareness, and then ultimately we promote active involvement by the community, because by promoting that involvement, we generate a sense of stewardship. When all is said and done, we engage our community in a way that puts them in the watershed. It gets them out of a classroom, it gets them out of a meeting room, it gets them out of their home into the field. People, I feel, these days are looking for these opportunities, whether it's a student, an adult, any type of community member. They want to help in their watershed. They want to be a part of something special. Through these efforts, through this leveraging, through this partnership, we're allowing these community members to become better aligned in partnership with the important governmental and foundational organizations that we speak about. Most importantly, the logos you see on here, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, USDA NRCS, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and the William Penn Foundation, to name a few. Remember, I had that picture way back in the beginning of I'll admit that is myself, standing in the stream there, trying to define or figure out what's going on in our watershed. And when this picture was taken years ago, we were a small watershed organization trying to figure out what do we do in our watershed? How can we write a story? How can we find the project? And through all of this partnership collaboration, through the funding resources that have been provided, through the grants from the Department of Environmental Protection that have allowed us to grow into an organizational or to have an organizational structure, the partners that have now come together to join the three logos up top are enabling us to put projects on the ground, are enabling us to find the money to actually make something happen. And it's those success stories, whether it's the Ideal Farm success story, or that manure management project that I showed you, or the McEwen School Rain Garden, or next week the Newton Rain Garden, or any of the projects that Brittany spoke to you about. When all these partners come together, we're finding a synergy. We're finding common ground. And I'm proud to say, you know, since my year as a watershed ambassador, and now I've been the watershed director for the MUA for 16 years, today I feel very confident when I say that I think the communication and collaboration between all of these various organizations, between all the different organizations represented here in the room, is the highest it's ever been. I think it's the strongest it's ever been. And as a result, we are all working together to find unique ways to bring our resources together because we all have a common ground. We all have a common goal. We want to improve the water quality of our waterways here in New Jersey. And I think when all is said and done, if we allow ourselves to harness the momentum that is now in place to work together, to find ways to bring resources together, we're going to put more and more projects on the ground. And we're going to reduce, as Jim had in his slides earlier, the amount of red and yellow that was on that bar graph that he had. And I'm confident we're going to do that, not just by being the people that we are in this room working on this day by day, but by getting the community members that we are targeting to work with us day by day. I'll leave you with this note. I referenced the students at McEwen School. I had those 300 students that participated in the development of that rain garden. And you may think, well, they participated in that rain garden project. It was an opportunity to get out of the classroom, get out there and build something. Well, it's about creating a movement. It's about creating something for the future. And we had 30 of those students come out and, get ready for this, participate in a summer stormwater camp. All right? Not exactly what you expect kids to want to do, but these students came out and participated in a week-long stormwater camp where they went out and measured their parking lot, right? They went out and figured out how much stormwater was coming off of the parking lot for the next project. And it's that sense of environmental stewardship that we're trying to instill in our communities. And by doing that, that in itself is a funding resource that doesn't require us to actually find money to empower those kids, because now we've created that opportunity. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak here this afternoon. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions before we move into the public testimony, we'll be welcome to take those.
Thank you. I see Peggy has a question.
Yeah, that was very inspiring. Can you talk a little bit about Sussex County MUA and what the value for their participation is? And that's an unusual participant.
I'll be honest, that's one of my favorite questions. Good. And it is one I am very proud to answer as I stand here, 17 years later, because the Sussex County MUA, so here's the basis for that. The MUA was identified to be the host agency of the watershed planning grant from the Department of Environmental Protection back in 2000. They were designated by the Sussex County Board of Chosen Freeholders to accept that grant from the department to sponsor watershed management. And I will admit, when I came aboard as a watershed ambassador, I was fresh out of college. I joined into this effort, and I learned very quickly that was a very controversial decision at the time, and there were a lot of people that weren't in agreement with it. But to make a long story short, the MUA has served to be our administrative agent, that umbrella that allows us to operate as a watershed management group. Now, Myself and I have two other staff members. Christine Rogers is with me here today. I have another staff member who's with NRCS today, ironically, at a meeting. And then we also rely on the Watershed Ambassador Program. So there's 4 of us operating under that MUA umbrella. So the MUA, in a way, they operate a solid waste and recycling facility and a wastewater treatment plant. And over the course of 17 years, our watershed management group has, in a way, become the third entity or the third arm of what they do for Sussex County. So the way they benefit, in fact, I was honored yesterday to give a presentation in front of the Board of Commissioners, very similar to this one, speaking about some of our upcoming projects. And they are benefiting from the fact that we are out there putting projects on the ground that are done with their partnership support. You know, they are serving as an entity that's providing us a lot of in-kind services, office space, use of a vehicle. And that type of support is funding that we don't need to ask for in the grants that we submit, including to the Department of Environmental Protection, because the MUA is helping to provide that for us. But ultimately, they are benefiting because they get to, as our side-by-side partner, you know, be rewarded by the community engagement, to be a part of the projects we're putting on the ground. And to this day, I still speak very highly of the fact that they have allowed us to grow into what we have and given us, you know, the support to make things happen.
Hi, Nathaniel.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Yes. My name is Kristen Meistrel. I am Stewardship Project Director with New Jersey Audubon. And so my question is, what, in terms of the riparian forest restoration, how much ag land, you know, either cropland or pasture land, was actually converted to create the riparian buffer project? And if that number is low, which I'm imagining some of it is pretty low, do you have a sense of whether or not there's going to be a lot of momentum and a push into, you know, expanding that buffer? And then another part of all of this is, what is your long-term maintenance strategy for the buffer? So 3 questions all wrapped up into one.
So looking at that corridor, that's what you're referring to, correct?
Yeah.
When you ask about, you know, how much ag land was converted to forested buffer. In fact, one of the things we like to study is the amount of acreage that is being reforested. Now, in that particular corridor, nothing in that corridor was specifically active or current agricultural lands. They were all retired ag pastures, which unfortunately over the years have become inundated by invasive species, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, whether it be, you know, multiflora rose, purple loosestrife, or reed canary grass being one of our biggest culprits. That project on the Jurisma farm, what's unique about it is not only are we reforesting that corridor, but we're doing so in partnership with USDA NRCS, which has now put through the Wetlands Reserve Protection Program a permanent easement on that property. Approximately 20 acres of that property have been converted to forested, or have been a part of the forest or reforestation efforts. That's a unique example because of the fact that we're not retiring active ag lands to put the project on the ground. Instead, we're working with lands that were formerly ag lands that are no longer being used. So that's, I hope that answers your first question.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
The long-term maintenance project or program. Well, we have been preaching for so long now, and everyone is very much in agreement with this. The maintenance on these projects is huge. There's no question about it. You cannot have a successful reforestation project without being out there day in and day out, finding ways to see what's going on, responding to the pressures, and then doing something about it regularly. Those tree tubes that you see in the pictures of our floodplain restoration work, on the Juritsma site, I'm very proud to say there are a few trees this past week that hit the 5-year mark. And the tree tubes that we use, I'm sure many of you are familiar with these tree tubes. They're made by 2-bags. They have a seam in them that splits once the tree gets big enough. And we had our first tree tube split this year. We're so proud. So we take the tree tubes off and they're recycled. But from a maintenance perspective, we will not work on a property unless we know there's some sort of management strategy in place. And believe it or not, one of the things we've been able to do is working side by side with NRCS, we've convinced them of the importance of the maintenance, and they are now allocating some funding resources to cover maintenance costs on projects like this, where they will fund a contractor to go out there, just like, you know, an equip contract, to perform maintenance work, to go out there, reset the tubes after a big storm event, control additional invasives that are pressuring those trees that we planted. So management strategies or maintenance is without a doubt something that needs to be incorporated before you actually plant in the ground. There was a third
Great.
question too, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. If you see that there is some momentum in trying to expand these buffers and ultimately maybe start to convert some areas into riparian forested buffers, or expand the buffer width itself.
So this project has now set a precedent for many other areas, particularly with my neck of the woods up there in Sussex County, where we have active buffer projects now in the neighboring watersheds, like the Papicating, like the Wallkill, like the Clove Brook. So the momentum is very much in place. The tree tubes have become the best press release, not only for the public, but other landowners who want to be a part of it. We're working very closely with the Nature Conservancy, who's also implementing a lot of these buffer projects. You guys with New Jersey Audubon are, putting a lot of these buffer projects on the ground. But in addition, we also have sites similar to that where we are combining management strategies. So your colleague, John Park, and I are working together on similar properties where we won't reforest this section. We'll manage it as a grasslands habitat, to better improve bird habitat. So that type of dialogue and synergy is what I was speaking about, how we're combining our restoration and conservation strategies instead of competing with one another.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that question, I was wondering if there was, if you found any conflict with NRCS, if you found any conflict between NRCS and Stroud and some of the other agencies that worked about how wide that buffer width should be. That's only one of my questions, but.
Projects of opportunity, we will work with what's provided to us. Speaking to that, you also have to work with the landowner. You can only accomplish what the landowner is going to allow you to do. And in all honesty, if a landowner is going to give you 50 foot or 50 feet to work with, we'll take it. If in that case we're going to have 300 feet or possibly even more, we're certainly going to take it. I would also say, for my small group, the William Penn Foundation initiative has allowed us to partner with somebody like Stroud. And to be able to work with the technical skills and expertise that Stroud brings to the table has been instrumental in our work. So I actually feel that there's such dialogue in place right now to prevent that type of debate and allow it to work side by side.
That's good to hear, because I'm more familiar with work that's been done in Schuylkill.
Mm-hmm.
And there was quite a bit of controversy with NRCS money and taking land out of tillage and putting it, and what they would cover, what they wouldn't cover, as far as width of that buffer and what the CREP program and things like that would cover. So that's one of my questions. I'm not all really familiar with the Wallkill. My question is, do you have anything other than domestic water supply up there, and mostly wells? Do you have any larger purveyors? And have they got, if you do you see expanding into getting them as partners for source water protection? Okay.
The reality is most of Sussex County is all on private well supply or community well supply. There's a few small public water supplies, but with respect to partnering with a water supply authority in Sussex County, we do not have that opportunity. No.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, Jim, thank you very much for the time up here. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the questions in addition to the time.
Okay, why don't we take a 5-minute break before we move to the public hearing portion of the day. Folks, we're going to move to the public testimony portion of our afternoon. I'm asking everyone to please keep your testimony to 5 minutes. We would be more than happy to take longer testimony written from you. And we would love to have, even if your testimony is under 5 minutes, we would love to have it written as well. It'll help us sort through all the comments at the end. So we have 7 people so far that have signed up to testify. We're going to start with Laura Tesseri from North Jersey RC&D. If you just come up to the microphone, and thank you.
So I'm Laura Tesseri. I'm the Associate Director of the North Jersey RC&D, Resource Conservation and Development Council. We're a small nonprofit located in Asbury, New Jersey, along a beautiful stretch of the Musconetcong River, not too far north of Route 78. And our mission speaks towards working towards the sustainable use and protection of natural and human resources through innovation, education, and partnerships. As Nathaniel spoke, partnerships are key. I mean, we couldn't really join together and achieve what we're able to achieve without our partnerships. And so we work with NJDEP 319 grants, with NRCS, through partner agreements, and also through the grants that they're able to make to their producers, the Delaware River Watershed Initiative, and New Jersey Department of Ag, and others. To the goal that we work with all this grant funding, we work towards water quality improvements, towards green infrastructure installations with municipalities, with residents, and others, things such as the rain gardens that were mentioned today. We also work with ag producers, and our work with ag producers, anything from riparian buffers to heavy use area protection facilities, stream crossings, armored stream crossings, all for the good of water quality. And we also have a voluntary program along with the Water Supply Authority, the River Friendly Farm Certification. And so we really try to educate the producers through that initial voluntary program where we go out on their farms and take a look at their resource concerns and then possibly work with them further through DEP and NRCS grants. And then our aerial cover crop seeding program also, over 2,000 acres of aerial cover crops were seeded this year in some targeted watershed areas. And so in furthering through with that cover crop seeding, I mean, we want our soil to stay covered. And I heard at a soil conference past couple days from Ray Archuleta, quote, we don't have a runoff problem, we have an infiltration problem. And so I think we really need to work towards soil health, to really work towards voluntarily, not necessarily calling out a producer, but instead working through them for stewardship, also to save them time, money, fuel, costs, and not have them be a targeted of a non-poised source pollution, but to have them be a success story and wanting to work with us and further that goal. And so education is really key. Farmer-to-farmer education is key. We see some of our best results from farmer ag field days and really getting the farmers out there on the field and talking about results, not necessarily being talked to, but talking amongst themselves. And so we'd like to see that pushed and to see a push towards soil health because cover crops, I saw a sign over the past couple of days, cover crops equals healthy soil and clean water. And all that push towards better infiltration means reduced runoff. So the cover is on the land, keeps green, no runoff, but then increased soil matter, which happens as a result of this cover cropping, 1% increase in organic matter is a holding capacity additional 27,000 gallons of water per acre. So I think there's a lot of good through that program that we can see into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Jeff Tittle from the New Jersey Sierra Club.
Thank you, Jeff Tittle, Director, New Jersey Sierra Club, and I want to, thank the staff and the council members for being here and all the good work that's been done over the years by the department. I've been involved in water protection issues, probably since I was a kid. I was, in fact, yesterday was the 45th anniversary of the Clean Water Act going into effect, and I was there in October protesting in front of the Capitol to help encourage the legislature at that time, the Congress, to overturn President Nixon's veto, and it passed overwhelmingly. And I've been involved first Earth Day. I was involved in the cleanup of the Elizabeth River and Hillside in my junior high, and it's still going on today. Earth Day 1973 walked all the streams and rivers in and around Hillside, where I was, and was a founding member of the Environmental Commission and chair, to identify point sources of pollution so that they would be reported and would have to come in to the DEP and get permitted. So I always want to kind of give you a little bit of history. I spent summers next to the Wanakee Reservoir, so I have a long history working on water issues. And I'm here because I think what was left out of the presentations today, and there are a lot of good people doing good work, is the regulatory scheme. That planning and regulations have to be an integral part of what the Department of Environmental Protection does when it comes to drinking water and clean water. Without it, all you're doing is some nice projects, but what happens in the end? I mean, I saw a nice presentation about the rain gardens. That's great, but we've eliminated the SWRPA. How much more water would be protected and cleaned up by keeping the SWRPA in place than having to build a rain garden to make up for the loss of that SWRPA? I've been involved with the Walk-Hill over almost 30 years now. 4 times the Walk-Hill River was nominated for Category 1 stream designation because it drains into a wildlife refuge and there's a lot of bog turtle and very high quality waters. 4 times politics reared its head and the department was rebuffed from the governor's office. So it's good to see that SCUMA is doing some nice things, but the expansion of the plant and the thousands of units that were added don't make up for, dealing with the cow manure. And so it really comes down to public and politics, but also regulations. And so I'm sorry that Mr. Glass left because I would have, wanted to respond to his end, about people saying things are too late and being critical. I was there when we did, the last water supply master plan. And Dan was here, and I know he was part of that, and my friend Steve Nieswan, who's since retired from 2 jobs since then. We did a lot of good work on water in the state. We put in, and I was involved very, very closely in getting the Highlands Act passed and the wetlands rules back in 1988 and 89. And I remember walking all the wetlands up in northern Passaic County and Bergen County to kick out the wetlands under the Army Corps jurisdiction to the state. Flood hazard rules, the expansion of the Category 1 program, water quality planning rules, the stormwater rules, and on and on. And the reason I'm saying that is because under this administration, every one of those rules has been weakened, and every weakening of those rules adds to more pollution in our waterways and more overdevelopment and more building in flood-prone areas and in flood hazard areas. Same thing with the weakening of the CAFR rules. When I started with Sierra Club 20 years ago, 15% of our streams in New Jersey met all the definition of swimmable, fishable, and drinkable. Now only one stream system in the entire state meets that definition, and that's the Flatbrook. When I started, 40% of our streams were impaired by phosphorus. Now it's over 65%. We were making progress. We're seeing progress going backwards because we're not putting in the planning and regulatory schemes that need to be done to protect water supply. So we can be doing a lot of good things, but when you take areas that are environmentally sensitive in Ocean County that were removed in 2007 and 2008 from the sewer service area, and then you put most of them back in, you're going to see a degrading water quality in the Barnegat Bay no matter what nice things we do. With the overdevelopment that's happening in Lakewood, we're going to see even more impacts, and the overpumping of the aquifer down there and discharging out to the oceans. We've seen the Matitaconk stream, drop, over a foot during the last decade. So we're going to see more and more of that. And so the reason I'm here today for the Clean Water Council is that this administration is coming to a close. There was evidence that Barnegat Bay should have been impaired more than 10, 15 years ago. Great reports by Mike Kennish, many of them that were suppressed. So what I'm here today to say, and I forgot to mention the rollback of the Highlands septic density rules, and the whole list. What I'm here to say today is for the Clean Water Council, is start planning for next year and for a next administration. Hopefully administration that's going to care about water quality and drinking water, that's not going to disband the Drinking Water Quality Institute and not nominate a new standard for drinking water until the end of its administration. Also in that 20-year period, we have seen 6 reservoirs in New Jersey close because of pollution. We've seen over 1,200 wells closed because of pollution. We have 3,500 potable wells in this state that are within the 12-year time of travel of RCRA sites. we have a serious water problem. We have a problem of overdevelopment, making droughts worse and making floods worse. We have a problem with water quality because of pollution that's been historic in many areas. The challenge now is to move forward to make sure we start making up for the 8 years of lost time and degradation to our water supply and go back and strengthen our rules and move us forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Maestrel from New Jersey Audubon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Maestrel. I'm the Stewardship Project Director with New Jersey Audubon, and I'm actually very, very thankful that I'm here today to be able to talk to you about all of this, and that Nathaniel and Brittany actually did their presentations earlier, because it really, really flows nicely into what I want to talk about today. So a little bit about New Jersey Audubon. We are a statewide nonprofit conservation organization, and we have a long history working with the agricultural community and private landowners to enhance, restore, and maintain wildlife habitat. So again, I'm glad that Nathaniel touched a little bit on the Delaware River Watershed Initiative, so I don't have to get into it too much, but we are a part of the Delaware River Watershed Initiative, and through that we are working towards improving wildlife habitat on working lands through the implementation of agricultural best management practices that also happen to address water quality and soil health. We think that this is a really, really important thing to be driving home, the importance of working with our ag community and working with our private landowners. And so we're doing a lot of things like working with them to implement cover crops and no-till or reduced till, working to install filter strips and install riparian buffers, and then also working to restore and maintain livestock fencing and stream crossings. And so through all of this work, we've had the wonderful opportunity to build trust within the agricultural community, and we've built that trust by really, really listening and hearing what the ag community has to, some of the issues that they are facing. So this has allowed us to gain a lot of feedback and really think about exactly what the obstacles are that the ag community is facing. And really, the obstacles that they are facing falls into two categories. It's the financial and the technical support to be able to do these practices. So the technical support is, talking with the ag producer or the landowner and discussing the importance of some of these BMPs, but also creating relationships and building partnerships where now you can have the ag community talking to each other and ag producers talking to each other and really creating that good community where we're all discussing different things and how you can really improve water quality through these BMPs. And then the other one is really, I think, an issue that everyone faces, and that's the lack of financial support for a lot of this work. We really need to work on trying to make sure we're continuing to leverage the funding and different resources available to try and make sure that there's enough support to be able to install or implement these BMPs, that there's enough support incentives to put these BMPs on the ground. So that's specifically talking about riparian buffers and taking cropland out of production to make sure that we are protecting our waterways, making sure that there's adequate incentives to be able to do that. And then most importantly, I touched on this a little bit in my question, and that is the funding and maintenance, long-term maintenance of these BMPs. So without the financial support to be able to do this, a lot of the work and the resources that we put into all of this work will go down the drain. So we've been able to have the great opportunity to work with fantastic partners in the Delaware River Watershed Initiative. We've gotten support from William Penn Foundation, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, and now 319 funding through NJDEP to try and offer voluntary programs to ag producers that emphasize the importance of ag BMPs and to provide funding to implement and maintain these BMPs, and then also creating that platform to be able to allow ag producers to talk to one another and really discuss the benefits and the challenges of these BMPs. But I really, really want to emphasize the voluntary aspect of this, because if we're not providing good structure and we're not providing a voluntary program that really listens to the needs of our ag producers and landowners, especially listening to the needs that go beyond ecosystem function and really hear what kind of challenges that they're facing. By doing all of that, we can really secure the long-term success of these BMPs and then start to amplify them and allow them to really, really go across the entire state and not just where a couple really great partnerships are happening and putting these projects on the ground. So I want to thank you all for your attention and for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. The next is Gail Smith from Montgomery Township.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today about ideas for non-point source pollution reduction. My name is Gail Smith, and I am the Montgomery Township engineer. Montgomery Township, through its sewer utility, operates 6 wastewater treatment plants, all subject to separate discharge limits through the NJPDES permit for each plant. The GIPTES permit, sorry. The township is also a Tier A municipality subject to the Municipal Stormwater Management Program. The township supports the concept of a non-point source pollution trading program. The township foresees escalating costs to achieve increasingly restrictive discharge limits for its point source discharges from the wastewater treatment plants. To most effectively reduce pollutant loads in waterways, a trading program could be a good option. Montgomery owns and operates about 36 detention basins. The majority of these basins were constructed in the 1980s and 1990s, before effective water quality features were part of the basin design. One possible example for a trading program would be to retrofit detention basins to improve non-point water quality instead of wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Addressing point source pollution alone will not sufficiently clean up our impaired waterways. We urge NJDEP to be open and flexible to innovative ways to reduce pollutant loads, whether they be from point or non-point sources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. Jennifer Coffey from ANJAC.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm going to officially take off my Clean Water Council advisory tag there. Jennifer Coffey from ANJAC, the executive director there. The Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions is about a 49-year-old organization, and our mission is to help local governments, municipalities, make good decisions for the environment. In doing so, we have great partners, many of whom are in this room, including the department on a number of projects. We have also installed a number of rain gardens. We are partners in the Delaware River Watershed Initiative to protect and restore the Delaware River. We also have a small grants program where we provide funds to environmental commissions to create rain gardens, community gardens, pollinator gardens, stream buffers. That said, and hearing everything that was said here today, I want to echo the comments of Jeff Tittle, which he made earlier. All of the work that the nonprofits are doing and that municipalities are doing at the local level cannot possibly reverse the impairments that we have in our waterways from pathogens and nutrients without a strong regulatory scheme. The rollbacks that we saw in the flood hazard area regulations earlier this year are abhorrent when you look at the impairments that we have to water quality. Eliminating the Special Water Resource Protection Area, also known as the SWRPA, allows more impairments to many of our tributaries and our main sources of drinking water. Allowing more development closer to our streams through the flood hazard rules is also abhorrent. So it will reverse any of the good work that is being done through nonprofits, local governments, corporate partnerships without those strong regulatory standards. We do need, in the next administration, to look at not only going back to where the flood hazard rules were 12 months ago, but look at what's coming in 20, 30 years. We have the data. The data is strong in terms of where the flooding projections are going to take us from sea level rise, and also because of too much development in the wrong places. We have a lot of impervious cover that prevents rainwater from soaking in, and we have rising tides. So let's look at that data and let's incorporate that into our flood hazard projections so that we keep people and businesses out of harm's way. The other thing I'd like to talk about just very briefly with the stormwater rules, as those are being talked about in the next administration, we have an election in 2.5 weeks, so there is a new administration coming, is very tight integration with the surface water quality rules. We talked about TMDLs here today, total maximum daily loads. We talked about new GIPDs, New Jersey pollution discharge elimination permits. And as it stands right now, you can get approval for a stormwater plan at the local or at the state level if you're triggering other rules. And you can allow discharge into a stream that violates standards for nutrients. That should not be possible. You should not, under the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act, and we invoked Nixon earlier, you should not be able to make water quality worse. So those rules need to be better integrated in the next administration so that you are prohibited from discharging additional nutrients into a stream that violates surface water quality standards. And in doing so, what we should require is mandatory construction of green infrastructure, or what we call as non-point source, we call non-structural measures in the stormwater rules. So green infrastructure, and we heard a lot about that here today, uptakes nutrients. There should, that standard in the stormwater rules of maximum extent practicable needs to be, it needs to be thrown overboard, because that maximum extent practicable, when you meet most engineers, not all engineers, I know a lot of good engineers, they will say it's not practicable to put in green infrastructure. And I say, hang on, give me the whiteout. And when you start reconfiguring the way that you're developing a site or putting less impervious cover in, it is practicable. And so we need to change the regulations to make sure that we're removing more nutrients, we're not discharging nutrients into streams that already violate our standards, and that we look at our flood hazard rules and create bigger and better buffers for what we know is going to happen for our children and our children's children. Thank you.
Thank you. Candace Perry from New Jersey Future.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Candace Perry, and I'm from New Jersey Future, which is a statewide, nonpartisan nonprofit that engages in smart growth policy, research, technical assistance, education, and advocacy for about over 30 years. Thank you so much to the council for this opportunity to testify today. New Jersey's waterways need to be protected from the negative effects of non-point source pollution. My testimony will respond to 3 of the council's questions. First, how can a municipality's stormwater program better address non-point source pollution reduction? Green infrastructure. So green infrastructure is an approach to managing stormwater by enabling water to infiltrate into the ground where it falls, or by capturing that stormwater for later reuse. Green infrastructure is an important strategy to mitigate non-point source pollution and improve water quality, especially in developed areas where impervious surfaces make up a large percentage of that municipality's land use. In addition to intercepting pollution from stormwater runoff and returning clean water to groundwater aquifers, green infrastructure is a powerful tool that offers many other benefits, including carbon sequestration, beautifying neighborhoods, aiding in traffic calming, increasing property values, and cooling the air. I assist in managing a program at New Jersey Future called Mainstreaming Green Infrastructure, which strives to make green infrastructure the first choice for stormwater management in the state of New Jersey. And we do that in a few ways, through working with towns, working with developers, advancing demonstration projects, and working with state agencies. Your second question, what can the department do to ensure required non-point source pollution reductions? So after working in the Mainstreaming Green Infrastructure program for about 2 years now, we have learned that there are important steps that the department can take in order to allow green infrastructure to reach its fullest potential in terms of mitigating non-point source pollution. First, to ensure non-point source pollution reductions, the department should improve its stormwater management rules and revise its stormwater management best practices manual that accompanies the rule. Specifically, the rule must do more to require the use of green infrastructure and remove the loophole that requires developers to use non-structural stormwater management strategies to the maximum extent practicable, and replace it with an objective standard that accounts for practices that infiltrate stormwater. This will increase the use of green infrastructure by increasing the level of predictability to developers. Secondly, some municipalities craft their local regulations in ways that go above and beyond the department's regulations. New Jersey Future recommends that the department provides clear guidance on ways that municipalities can do this, on ways that municipalities can strengthen their local stormwater management regulations, which will ultimately add to the department's goal of reducing non-point source pollution and restoring clean water for New Jersey. Third, the department should release its guidance for green infrastructure for the CSO long-term control plan as soon as possible to allow CSO permittees to start their planning efforts for their long-term control plan. And lastly, what sources of funding can be tapped for these necessary non-point source pollution reductions? New Jersey Future recommends New Jersey Future commends the department on the recent announcement of its water quality restoration grants for non-point source pollution program. New Jersey Future recommends that the DEP continues to direct a portion of its 319 H monies and other funds to support communities in constructing green infrastructure projects. Even with these grants, though, municipalities still lack adequate funding to manage stormwater. Local departments of public works face many demands for their limited resources. A sustainable funding source to fund and maintain stormwater management efforts is crucial to enable municipalities to meet their regulatory requirements and to achieve better environmental outcomes. Stormwater fees are authorized in 39 other states to raise funds to upgrade and maintain stormwater infrastructure. New Jersey Future expects legislation to authorize stormwater fees, and it should be reintroduced in early 2018, if not before. We recommend that the department support this discussion with its technical assistance and technical expertise. Again, thank you so much on the behalf of New Jersey Future for the opportunity to testify today, and happy to follow up with any questions afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Peggy Gallows from the New Jersey Association of Environmental Authorities.
Good afternoon. My name is Peggy Gallows. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Environmental Authorities. We are an organization of water and wastewater public agencies, and we provide services to millions of people across the state. I'm very happy to be here today at this hearing. Stormwater is not a statutory responsibility of authorities. And that may be why Sussex County MUA had a little controversy about becoming involved in the project that Nathaniel referred to earlier. But AEA members have a very strong interest in participating in this important state dialogue because we want a cleaner environment. And we also think that addressing stormwater can help us save money and save ratepayer money in wastewater facilities and also better protect drinking water. Sussex County MUA is a wonderful example of collaboration, and some AEA members on probably a smaller scale do a lot of informal assistance with stormwater with their municipalities, not a revenue source for them, but just the kind of friendships that Nathaniel was talking about and collaborations that he was talking about. AEA has recently been engaged in the dialogue about stormwater utilities and the establishing of stormwater fees. And given that authorities have the statutory permission and the revenue, authorities can be a really important player in this whole thing. Authorities know about cleaning water, after all, and it's largely thanks to modern sewage treatment that we have made many of the strides that we have made. The department has done a great deal to focus on stormwater in the last couple of years, and we commend that. We also thank the Clean Water Council for the work it's done on this, which is really the next great frontier. And I was kind of thinking about all these different approaches and different ways of going about this and different collaborations, but the bottom line is that we need to create the political will to address this problem. And for our part, we're very interested and we're very eager to be part of the effort to create the political will to do this. There are many, many approaches. Authorities can play a role in that. And we also are very interested in participating in efforts to create collaborations and educate local officials and the public about the importance of this particular problem. We believe that collaboration and collaborative approaches, flexibility, and incentives for positive efforts are the kinds of elements that are needed in this work. And we hope that we can create more momentum, build on the momentum that has been started to address non-point source pollution. We will have more detailed comments to submit later. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Is there anyone else that wishes to testify?
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mike Pissarro. I'm the Policy Director for Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association. I wanted to follow up with something that Jen Coffey said and Jeff Tittle about the regulations, but Jen Coffey mentioned water quality standards in land use decisions. The rules already say to DEP they should not be issuing permits to impaired waters. But to go further, I've been going the last several years to planning boards and zoning board hearings where they're approving stormwater plans, they're approving development close to streams, and I start talking about impaired waters. And most of those individuals sort of eyes glare over and go, there's impaired waters? What? I had no idea. And then when I say, well, the stormwater rules say you have to reduce TSS by 80%, but you have an impaired water, you have to do better. There's just blank looks. The rules already say that. The Clean Water Act already says that. The linkages need to be cleaner, more enforced, and the tools need to be out there. There is a municipality in my watershed who I went to discuss, and I said, well, there's a TMDL for your waterways. Again, I now had to spend the next 5 minutes explaining what a TMDL was and what that really meant. Again, the stormwater plans needed to be better because that waterway had an 83% or 84% reduction in TSS removal. But how are you going to get there if we're still doing what we've always done before and just following the rules that don't really make those linkages clear? The other thing is we have a lot of our older communities that have been built before stormwater management. The rules as they are written do not require any stormwater management for those older communities as they get redeveloped. And they are getting redeveloped, and we want to encourage them to be redeveloped. But as extreme storm events are increasing, the densities have increased, the impervious surfaces upstream have increased. We're not going to see improvements in water quality if we're not starting to address redevelopment. And to miss that opportunity is just to sort of force us to be back here in the next few years going, why is this not working? So we need to require and give better tools to municipal officials to address water quality and those impairments, to recognize they are there and to deal with that. The rules need to be more explicit. DEP needs to do a better job, and they do a great job. And but getting that information out about the TMDLs. I mean, the Raritan TMDL was proposed years ago, was sent up to EPA in 2014, approved last year, but yet most municipalities don't know it exists and what it really means. So those tools and that training needs and that education needs to get out there. And, not only should our stormwater rules be better in impaired waters, but maybe we need to enhance those stream buffers, those transition areas. Maybe transition area waiver doesn't make sense to a wetland adjacent to an impaired water. Maybe allowing an incursion into the riparian zone along a stream that's impaired doesn't make sense. So we need to integrate that better. We will be submitting more detailed comments, but I'd like to thank the council for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I just wanted to put this up. If any of you, especially those of you who spoke, if you want to submit written comments, or if any of you think of other things after today, we're accepting comments until October 31st. So there's the address, fax number, email address. Please send your comments electronically in Word format if possible. Thank you very much for coming today, and we'll close the hearing at this point.